The first thing I saw that morning was the chain. It stretched across my private road like somebody had declared war before breakfast. Two metal posts had been driven into the gravel overnight, and a bright yellow sign hung in the middle of them: HOA, Access Road, Residents Only. I stood there with my keys in my hand, staring at it. That road was not a community entrance. It was not owned, paid for, or maintained by the HOA. It crossed my land and connected my house to the county road. Then I heard shouting. Mark Ellison, the HOA president, marched toward me with two board members behind him. His face was red, and he was waving a folder like it gave him power over my property. "You are not removing that chain," he yelled. "This road is under HOA control now." I looked at the posts sunk into my gravel.
Dig it deeper right there. We need these secure by
Mark
noon.
laughed so the neighbors
Make sure
could
they
hear.
are perfectly
Your
straight.
property? The board voted last night. This is a community access road. A delivery truck pulled up behind me and stopped, trapped in my driveway. Someone across the street started recording. Mark raised his voice even more. "If you touch that chain, I'm calling the sheriff." That was when I understood this was not a mistake. The HOA had walked onto my land, blocked my only way out, and dared me to prove I owned what my deed already said was mine. I did not yell. I did not cut the chain. I pulled out my phone and recorded the posts, the sign, the truck, and Mark standing proudly beside all of it. Then I looked him in the eye and said, "You're going to regret putting that sign on my land." He smirked like I had made an empty threat. 2 hours later, that chain would be photographed by the sheriff. 1 week later, it would be attached to a demand letter from my attorney, and before the month was over, the HOA would have to admit in writing that the road they tried to claim had never belonged to them at all. I never bought that house because I wanted trouble. I bought it because it was quiet. The house sat at the far edge of the subdivision, behind a line of old oak trees, with a gravel road running from my garage to the county road. It was not fancy, but the first time I drove up that road and heard the tires crunch over the gravel, I felt like I had finally found peace. That road was one of the reasons I bought the property. It gave the house privacy. It gave me distance from neighborhood traffic. It gave delivery drivers, emergency vehicles, and guests a clear way in and out. More importantly, it belonged to the land I was paying for. When I closed on the house, I read everything carefully: the deed, the title report, the plat map, the survey, and the easement language recorded with the county. A few homes behind mine had a limited right to pass over part of the road. That was fine. An easement meant access. It did not mean ownership. For years, I never made an issue out of it. If my neighbors drove through slowly, I waved. If a delivery truck used the road, I did not complain. I was not trying to be the angry property owner who measured every tire mark in the gravel. But little by little, the HOA treated my patience like permission. First, they emailed me about trimming branches along the road. Then they asked me to move 2 planters because they claimed the planters affected community access. Later, someone from the architectural committee said my security camera made residents uncomfortable because it faced the road. I answered politely every time. I reminded them that the road was private property with a recorded easement, not an HOA street. But their wording kept changing. They called it the access road, then the shared road, then, finally, the HOA access road. That was when I started paying attention. Because words matter in property disputes. A wrong phrase repeated often enough can become the beginning of an expensive lie. And when an HOA starts calling your private road theirs, they are not just being careless. They are testing how much you are willing to let them take. So when that yellow chain appeared across my road, I was shocked, but I was not completely surprised. The warning signs had been there for months. I just had not realized how far they were willing to go. The first official warning came in an email on a Monday morning. The subject line said, "Notice of Access Road Standardization." At first, I thought it had been sent to me by mistake. Then, I opened it and saw my address at the top. The HOA board said they would begin standardizing access control on the road running through my property. They never called it my road. They called it the Community Access Corridor. According to the email, because several residents used that route to reach the backlots, the HOA now had authority to place signs, enforce speed rules, restrict parking, and fine anyone who interfered with shared neighborhood access. I replied calmly and asked them to send me the recorded document proving the HOA owned, maintained, or controlled the road. Mark Ellison answered less than an hour later. He said the board did not need my approval because long-standing community use establishes HOA authority. He also warned that if I continued to obstruct access, the board would take enforcement action. A few days later, I came home from work and found fresh gravel spread near my gate. 2 reflective stakes had been installed, and a white arrow had been spray painted on the ground. Nobody had asked permission. My security camera showed a contractor's truck arriving that morning. Mark walked beside it, pointed at my road, and directed the workers exactly where to place everything. At one point, he looked toward my house, then turned away like he knew the camera was there but did not care. The next morning, the HOA fined me $750 for obstructing community access because my truck had been parked near the side of the road. My truck had been on my land. It had not blocked any home with easement rights. It had not blocked emergency access. It had simply been parked where I had parked it for years. That afternoon, Mark came to my front door and pounded so hard the glass panel shook. "You need to understand something," he said. "That road serves the whole community, not just you." I told him again it was private property with a limited recorded easement. He smiled, like I had told a joke. "Then prove it in court," he said. "Until then, we'll manage it." That sentence showed me everything. They were not confused. They had decided that if they acted confident enough, loud enough, and fast enough, I would back down. Then came the Saturday morning chain. 2 metal posts, a yellow barrier, a sign calling my private road an HOA access road. My only way out blocked, while the board stood there, acting like they had won. And while Mark was smiling for the neighbors, my cameras were recording every second of it. I wanted to cut that chain, more than I wanted to admit. Standing there with my keys in my hand, and my only way out blocked, it would have felt good to grab bolt cutters, snap the lock, and throw the sign into the weeds. But that was exactly what Mark wanted. He wanted me angry. He wanted me on camera looking reckless. He wanted to tell the sheriff I had destroyed HOA property, even though that chain was sitting on land the HOA had no right to touch. So I did nothing dramatic. I recorded everything. The metal posts, the yellow chain, the sign, the fresh gravel, the spray-painted arrow, the blocked delivery truck, the board members, standing beside it. I made sure the video caught Mark saying the HOA had taken control of the road. Then I went inside and downloaded every clip from my security cameras. There was the contractor's truck arriving without permission. There was Mark pointing at my road. There were workers driving posts into my gravel. And one board member even held the chain while another took pictures like they were proud of themselves. I saved everything twice. Then, I pulled out the closing folder from when I bought the house, the deed, the title policy, the plat map, the survey, and the easement paperwork. The documents looked clear to me, but I knew that would not be enough. HOA boards argue with homeowners. They argue less when a licensed surveyor, a county record, and an attorney all say the same thing. So I called the surveyor. 2 days later, he walked the road with a tripod, flags, and county mapping data. He measured the road, checked the legal description, compared it to the recorded plat, and placed bright orange flags along the boundary. When he finished, he looked at the chain and shook his head. The posts were on my parcel. The sign was on my parcel. The painted arrow was on my parcel. Even the gravel they spread without permission was inside my boundary. The backlot owners only had a limited easement to pass through. Not to manage, not to block, not to improve, not to fine, not to rename my private road like it belonged to the HOA. After that, I went to the county recorder's office and requested certified copies of the easement documents. The clerk found the old file under the subdivision records. When she handed it to me, I noticed the stamp, the recording number, and the date at the top. That paper was not an opinion. It was the kind of document that changes the tone of a conversation. Later, I sent everything to a real estate attorney. The camera footage, the surveyor's notes, the HOA emails, the fine, the photos, and the certified easement. His reply came back the next morning. The HOA had a serious problem. They had likely trespassed. They had blocked lawful access to my own property. They had misrepresented the easement, and by fining me for parking on land I owned, they had created a paper trail against themselves. But the biggest surprise was in an old county file. Years earlier, the original developer had tried to make my road part of the HOA access system. The county rejected it. The road was too narrow, too private, and not built for public access. The HOA had not just misunderstood the road. They were trying to claim authority the county had already refused to give them. And once my attorney saw that, the whole case changed. The document that broke the HOA's story was only 4 pages long. It had a county recording number, a legal description, and one sentence Mark Ellison could not talk his way around. The easement gave certain backlot owners the right of ingress and egress across a defined strip of my land. That was it. Access. Not ownership. Not control. Not management. Not enforcement authority. Nothing in that document gave the HOA the right to install signs, spread gravel, paint arrows, block my road, fine me, or call my property an HOA access road. Then my attorney showed me the old subdivision file. Years before I bought the house, the developer had tried to make my road a secondary neighborhood entrance. The county rejected it. The road was too narrow, too private, and not built to public access standards. That was why the easement had been written so narrowly. The HOA had not stepped into a gray area. They had crossed a boundary the county had already drawn. That afternoon, my attorney sent a demand letter. It ordered the HOA to remove the chain, posts, sign, painted markings, and unauthorized gravel within 24 hours. It demanded they cancel the $750 fine, reimburse my survey costs, preserve all board emails, and confirm in writing that they had no authority over my private road. Mark answered through the management company the next morning. He called the letter an intimidation tactic. He said the HOA would not be bullied by old paperwork. That was his biggest mistake, because old paperwork is exactly what property law runs on. The deed was old paperwork. The plat map was old paperwork. The recorded easement was old paperwork. The county's rejection was old paperwork. And every page said the same thing. The road was mine. The easement allowed limited passage only. The HOA had no right to take control. For the first time since the chain went up, I stopped feeling trapped. Mark had built his whole thread on volume, confidence, and the hope that I would be too scared to challenge him. But now the story was not about who shouted louder. It was about what was recorded at the county office. And the county record did not care who the HOA president thought he was. The HOA called the sheriff first. Mark thought that would make him look official. He stood beside the yellow chain with his folder under one arm, acting like he was protecting the neighborhood from me. 2 board members stood behind him, and a few neighbors watched from the edge of the road. When the deputy arrived, Mark started talking before anyone asked him a question. He said I was threatening to remove HOA property. He said the road served multiple homes. He said the board had voted to secure community access. The deputy listened, then asked one simple question. Do you have a recorded document showing the HOA controls this road? Mark opened his folder and pulled out the HOA bylaws, a meeting agenda, and a copy of the violation notice they had sent me. None of it proved ownership. None of it proved control. Then, the deputy turned to me. I handed him the deed, the survey, the plat map, and the certified recorded easement from the county recorder's office. My attorney had put colored tabs on the important pages, so the deputy could see the exact legal description and the limited language for ingress and egress. He read quietly for a moment. Then he looked at the chain, looked at the orange survey flags, and looked back at Mark. So where does it say the HOA can block the owner's access? Mark's face changed. For the first time since this started, he did not have a quick answer. He said the road was used by residents. The deputy nodded and pointed back at the document. That may explain access, he said. It does not explain ownership. A code enforcement officer arrived later that morning after my attorney contacted the county. He photographed the posts, the sign, the painted arrow, and the gravel the contractor had spread without permission. Then he asked, who authorized the work? The contractor tried to stay quiet. Mark said the HOA had approved it. That was when the officer wrote down Mark's name. The deputy told them the chain had to come down because it was blocking my lawful access to my own property. Mark objected, but his voice was different now, smaller, less certain. Nobody was arguing about feelings anymore. They were reading records. Within minutes, the same board members who had stood there proudly that morning were pulling the chain off the posts. The sign came down next. The contractor removed the reflective stakes while neighbors watched in total silence. Mark would not look at me. And the best part was that I never had to raise my voice. The sheriff had read the easement out loud, and the road was mine again before lunch. The chain came down before lunch, but the consequences did not stop there. By the next week, my attorney had sent the full file to the HOA management company, the board, and their insurance carrier. It included everything: the camera footage, the emails, the fine, the survey, the certified easement, The photos of the posts, the sign, the painted arrow, and the sheriff standing beside the road while Mark tried to explain why bylaws mattered more than county records. They had no good answer. The HOA canceled the $750 fine. Then they reimbursed my survey cost, my first attorney fee, and the cost to repair the gravel they had changed without permission. Code enforcement also issued a violation for the unpermitted sign and obstruction on private property. At the next HOA meeting, Mark tried to call it a misunderstanding. That did not work. Too many residents had seen the video, too many had read the demand letter, and too many were angry that HOA money had been used to fight a property claim the board never had. One homeowner stood up and asked why Mark had ignored the recorded easement. Another asked why contractors had been sent onto private land. Then someone asked the question that ended his night. How much of our money did you spend pretending you owned a road? Mark lost his position as president 2 weeks later. The new board sent me a written statement confirming that my road was private property and that the easement allowed limited passage only. They also agreed that no HOA signs, barriers, fines, or rules would be placed on it again. I did not close the road. I did not punish the neighbors who had legal access. I simply put up one small sign, exactly inside my boundary. Private road recorded easement access only. That was enough. I learned that day that you do not beat an HOA by shouting louder. You beat them by staying calm, keeping evidence, reading every document, and letting the law speak for you. And sometimes, the strongest line on your property is not the fence, the gravel, or the gate. It is the line already recorded at the county office.